There are two tracks here. There is like the psychology of it all.
Yep.
And then there's the football of it all. I think let's stick in the psychology where we're not really qualified
Yes,
first.
exactly. Let's be amateur
And
psychologists.
then we'll get to the football after the ad break.
Yes.
But on the I am sympathetic. Okay? Like I imagine that this is probably a very tense, difficult
100%.
time for the Sirianni family,
Yeah.
right? Like the entire city is always talking about him every week. I'm sure that the kids, like the ones who are old enough, are probably having like a tough time at school, right? Like I'm sure there are like any school, kids are like giving him a hard time. I'm sure the wife is having a tough time. He talked about it the other day, right? So that's all very hard. I imagine that all of this stuff is boiling up. And so, like, on the one hand, you know what? You want to bring the kids out on the press conference, it's fine. I don't think that in a vacuum it is objectionable. It is a little bit of a disconnect with 15 minutes ago, you're on the field like a rabid animal yelling at the fans, you know, like, and you know that you're going to get tough questions. I don't think that he is purposely bringing the kids out so that he's not going to get tough questions. I don't think that there's that intentionality to it. But like the disconnect, it's like, I don't know, you bring your kids to a bar because you want to like get to hang out with them too, and then you get in a bar fight, and then like 5 minutes later you're just walking out hand in hand like nothing happened. Like, what are we doing here? And then like it's to the point where I know that the haircut is like kind of a jokey thing.
Yeah.
But like in the middle of the bye week, when it's supposed to be this like sobering time of like we can clear-eyed evaluate everything that's going on, like at the end of the week he's just like shaving his head off and like some weird Britney Spears episode to the point where like not as a joke, I'm getting texts from people in the building or familiar with Nick. Like, I'm worried about the guy. I don't know that he's okay. Like, I don't know if he's going to make it through the season.
Well, you mean like with his job or just like
mental health wise?
Yeah. Like that's I could say heavy is the head that wears the crown, right? There's a component to that. We'll get to the kid part in a moment. Like I just want to address the psychology of it, which I agree. I'm not qualified to discuss, but I play an amateur psychologist on the PHLY Eagles show, right? I'll say this about Nick. Like Nick likes being liked. Like he's a now there is like the instigator part of it, but he's an amicable, like he's an outgoing people person. And part of his appeal, you know, he talks about connection. Like part of his appeal is that it must be hard being as I don't even want to say
lightning rod.
Yeah, he's okay being scrutinized. Like he gets that part of the job. But there's really been a lot of distaste for Nick this year in particular. It's become personal in some cases, and he as much as these guys say, you put your blinders on, you don't listen to outside noise, like you can't ignore it. It's there, and it's not just the PR staff prepping him for press conferences, right? It's like you said, he's a father, he's a husband, he's got, you know, he's a brother, he's a son. Like when the reality is this, when you're the head coach of an NFL team, but especially a team like the Philadelphia Eagles, everyone has an opinion, and you're bound to hear that opinion, right? And so, yeah, I imagine he's under intense scrutiny, number one, as it is. But this year in particular, and there's the pressure of coaching for his job. Like he knows the terms of this year, right? It's not like a media generated thing. He knows he needs to win. They started off 2-2. There's conversations about the job. Like if I can't imagine, you know, I read every comment. If every comment was about like you need to do well on the show or you're going to lose your job, like that would be like that would wear on you.
That's probably
right?
a good reason not to read the comments.
That would wear on you. But then if people are telling my wife all the time, like Zach's second segment today, he really did not do a good job there. I don't think he should be doing this job next year. Like, and then my wife says, "Do you think you're not going to be doing this job next year?" Like, this is a very real thing, right? Sure. There's real human emotion. So I hear what you're saying with the psychology of it. I don't know if Nick's unwell or well. I in my encounters with him, he's been good. You know, I chatted with him for the Doug Nussmeier story 2 weeks ago. I thought he was normal Nick. You know, we have some time with him. I thought earlier this year he was a little lighter. I thought there was some tense moments, maybe, you know, in the middle after the Atlanta game, that kind of thing. But I haven't found him to be unwell. That said, I, I s- I think that there was a moment yesterday after that game when clearly hearing these people throughout the game get on him, that he felt a need to say that, and that's where, yeah, who's his Nick Sirianni, like how Nick Sirianni and Big Dom are holding Jalen Carter back, and Clinton Hurd are holding Jalen Carter back. Like, who's telling Nick?
I think it's Dom.
Turn around.
Like,
then he should, turn around, because like, what are you trying to achieve by doing that?
Another super chat from CDP, Chase Daniel Plainview, who says, "Is Sirianni the sin eater? Is it better for the Eagles if Stephen A. and the like are discussing Nick going sicko mode than discussing the franchise QB going 0-5 to start the game? Love the program." We've talked about how like this particular setup seemed destined to fail, maybe strong, but like put Nick in the spotlight by design. Maybe that was kind of part of the design by Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman, that they know that by setting it up this way, Nick is going to always be the focus and like distract from the first round picks not living up to hype and all that stuff. But I don't think they saw it going quite this way.
Well, yeah, and look, there is sometimes like method to Nick's. I don't want to say madness, because that's the wrong term here, but yeah, there are times when he specifically wants to fall on the sword for his guys not to take it. Right? I don't
sometimes performatively.
Sure.
Like, yeah.
I don't think yesterday was him doing that to take the attention away. Like, I don't think he screamed at the fans so people wouldn't be talking about Jalen starting 0-5, right? I actually think that the discourse about the team today would have been, I think, fairly positive, right? They didn't look that great, but they needed the win. AJ Brown looked awesome. Devontae Smith, you know, like there's things to pick apart, like there is in any game, but they won the game.
I think you were more impressed with that performance than I was.
I wasn't impressed with the performance, but they didn't lose, is my point, right? Like, they didn't.
Well,
you're trying. They didn't lose.
They lost relative to the expectations of the game.
I don't know. I mean, it's one of those games that you win, but there's stuff to talk about, right? It's that. But I don't think that would have been like this really hot button, light up the phone lines game yesterday. It would have just been, they need to play better, but they got the win. Now they go play the Giants. I don't understand the benefit of all the conversation being about Nick Sirianni. And by the way, if people in the team building are watching this right now, this isn't media generated. Like, your coach brought this upon himself. It's not, oh, these guys are always talking about, like, no, we're not trying to, this isn't hot takes or anything. This is the Nick Sirianni brought this upon himself.
Well, I also think it goes to like this, for better or worse, like, this is sort of who Nick is, right? And it doesn't mean that he was a bad hire. Obviously not. He took him to the Super Bowl. It doesn't mean that he's not a good coach. I just think we have sort of talked about, he has such a up and down frenetic personality that it probably is not a thing that is built to last. You know, he is not the Andy Reid steady hand, like, clearest head in the room. Like, that's not who he is. And probably this is always a thing that was going to burn out at some point, you know, burn bright and then leave. I don't know.
And there are coaches, you know, people always talk about Jim Harbaugh that way, right? He's a great coach. I mean, he's one of the best coaches in the NFL, but that there's an expiration date. And maybe that's the case with Nick. I don't know that to be the case. Again, they're 5 games into the season. The schedule looks pretty soft.
It's exhausting, right?
I watched that game last night, the Giants-Bengals game. I get the Eagles aren't world beaters, but there's a world where the Eagles are 6-3, right? Or I'm sorry, 5-2. And yeah, so
you want to make a bet that they're not 5-2?
I mean, they're probably at the very least 4-3. I don't think they're 3-4.
I think they're more likely to be 3-4 than 5-2.
Well, I don't know how we make that bet more likely to be. Well,
Yeah,
yeah. Well, I guess we can ascribe odds or
I guess
assign
we
odds
could.
here.
Yeah.
Something to think about. Yeah, I think they're more likely to be 5-2 than 3-4.
If we can pivot now to the football of it,
Yes.
all of this is part of why I think, I, even though they won that game yesterday, I think I feel worse about the team.
Interesting.
Because all of this to me lays bare like Nick is going back to sort of like his greatest hits.
Okay.
Right. Like, oh, I got to get back to being crazy on the sideline. You know, people liked it when I brought my kids up there. I got good feedback that I was able to like cover for guys publicly. Like, let me do that even more now. And this is a team that went into the bye having a lot of questions to answer. And instead of answering those questions, they came out and looked the exact same. The problems that they had, those opening drives, guess what? 3 and out on the first possession, no points in the first quarter.
Yeah.
Like the motion that we saw in week 1, static again.
100%.
An offense that looks like it is incredibly uncreative and is only relying on A.J. Brown winning 50-50 balls. That's the biggest change to the offense. And to me, what has been proven out now is that we keep thinking this is such a talented roster. Like, if they could only just put it all together, you know, what a team they could be. This is the upside. There are no answers coming. You know, they had the bye week to get like back to it and figure out what they can do on offense. And this is what they came out with. It's incredibly dispiriting. And it reminds me of the end of last season where we kept being like, well, if only they could fix this or, you know, fix the blitz. Like, yeah, they've actually gotten better against the blitz this year. But the upside that this is going to be a really good offense is not there. Zach, their best game this season, offensively by EPA per drive, 76th percentile for all games in the NFL for an offense this year. That's their best game. They haven't had one game in which they've been a top 20 percentile offense. You know how many they had in 2022? 5.
Okay.
Like,
yeah, I mean,
they've
had 2 games with A.J. Brown.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't lend
and
as
one
much
of them
credence
has
to that.
been okay.
Yeah, and the other one they scored 34 points, and you know the quarterback turned it over 3 times, right? So yeah, I mean I push back on that to an extent. Where I agree with you is I expected far more.
This is who they are. There is no big thing coming.
So I really had an issue with Nick's answer about the slow starts because, like you say, you're going to fix it. The time to fix this was during these 2 weeks when you said these past 2 weeks when you said you were going to fix it, right? For them to come out 3 and out like they did, no points in the first quarter, really stalling those first 2 drives. To me, that's problematic because this was your chance. You had
the offense is still just relying on low percentage plays and hoping that our guy is better than your guy.
Yeah, and I understood. You know, I said on the pregame show yesterday with Fran and Jamie when they said, "How do you think the Eagles are going to attack this Jim Schwartz defense?" And I said they're going to attack them vertically. They're going to look for one-on-ones on the outside against single high looks and have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith try to win those one-on-ones. I thought this was a game where they were going to try to rely on explosives. And that was their game plan. And talking to players after, talking to Devontae Smith after the game, for instance, he mentioned as much. And, A.J. Brown said that on the touchdown, he was just hoping there'd be man coverage. The tight end went in motion. He knew it was man. And he said, all right, here's the chance, right? And they scored a touchdown on it. But I agree with your general point. There needs to be a more imaginative offense than just our guys are going to beat your guys, because that was their approach last year. And you've heard Jason Kelce say in probably the most honest discussion about last year that there's 2 ways to go when you're struggling. You can simplify things, or you can try to like add more and do more. And their approach last year was to scale back, to simplify. Their approach on defense was to add. And so it was kind of like neither side worked. But their approach last year, as things weren't working, is our guys are going to beat your guys. And the reality is that after the way they played in 2022, teams spent a lot of time looking at the Eagles. They spent a lot of time looking at Jalen. They spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to stop them. And you need a counterpunch. And your counterpunch can't just be players, not plays, right? Your counterpunch also needs to be finding plays to maximize those players. And when you look at the spray charts, for instance, it's not a good indication of that. I know you have the stat on play action that I
Well, yeah.
found fascinating.
Let's get into it
Yeah.
because what for like the layman, everybody knows what is the easy button in NFL offense these days, right? The simplest thing, play action.
Yeah.
The Eagles ran 2 plays the entire game yesterday in play action. That's the fewest that they have done as far as the true media charting goes back, which is, I believe, to 2016. It's the second lowest of any team in a game this season. That's insane.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. It's a very.
They also ran the ball a lot more
it's a good
yesterday. Shouldn't that have set up the play action?
In theory, yeah. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
It tells the story of an offense that is disconnected.
Yeah.
That has too many cooks, which is exactly what we were worried about.
So let me ask you this. Do you think this is Kellen Moore calling? Because I do believe Kellen Moore's calling the plays. But as we've talked about on the show for a while now, there's a difference between play calling and play design. Do you think this is the Kellen Moore offense? Or do you think Kellen Moore's calling like a modified version of the Nick Sirianni offense?
I think it's probably more of the latter. I think it's the Kellen Siri Patullo offense. Mm-hmm. Like it's all of it's nobody's offense.
Is it the Jalen Hurts offense?
And it's Jalen Hurts.
That's what I'm saying. Right. Is it the Jalen Hurts
part
offense?
Of it too. And you know the no balls over the middle of the field. It is hard to think that is not Jalen Hurts related.
Yeah.
And it's not like I was talking to Fran on the drive in. It's not like he was missing throws, that there were guys open over the middle of the field, but you would imagine they're putting the game plan together with that in mind. And maybe Jalen just likes throwing those balls on the outside. Maybe they thought that was a way to get away from the turnovers. I don't know. But like, yeah, it's ugly.
Yeah. So Jalen, one of the things that really stood out during the summer is,
by the way, very quickly, I misspoke earlier. The 2022, they had 5 games in which they were in the top 10 league-wide and then 7 top 20, whereas this year they haven't had a single one.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And look, as that sample size grows, I think we'll have a better indication of it too.
I mean, how many more answers? How much more time do we need to give them?
Well, I think if
they had a bye, they're playing a mediocre defense. They got A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Lane Johnson back, and it was still a very mediocre game for them.
No, I think if you play 2 games with A.J. Brown, I think you need a larger sample size than that to say.
How about we try to get A.J. Brown open instead of just relying on him winning a jump ball?
I'm on board with you there. And, A.J. Brown is so lethal on those slants. And if you look back in the practice notes, how many times did I write this play's automatic? Like sometimes I just wonder
17.
I just wonder in general, like, are they operating a different team in training camp than they are? Like are they so focused on like preserving the competitive advantage in training camp?
Right.
It's like, we're just going to run this different thing. We're going to have a different middle linebacker and a different slot cornerback during training camp. But we're going to have this real big element of surprise. We're going to put this different offense out there in training camp. We're going to have this element of surprise during the season. Yeah. That play worked. That play was money in training camp. It was money in Tennessee with A.J. Brown. And you even see it when they throw it. He's so good at stopping, turning, and getting yards after the catch. I want to see more of A.J. Brown after the catch. He's so dynamic that way. It doesn't all have to be the vertical game to him. But, no, you are right in terms of the lack of creativity. And I keep going back to Jalen Hurts, and I understand that, look, there's 2 common denominators here. 3 if you include Kevin Patullo. But Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts. But Jalen Hurts has played with Shane Steichen, Brian Johnson, and now Kellen Moore. If the ball's not going over the middle of the field, I think we have to look at the quarterback, number one. And
I think that's fair.
And then number 2, one of Jalen, and I was saying this before, one of Jalen Hurts' his points of emphasis during the offseason when he was talking about adjusting the new offenses is he says a big part of it is looking at the catalog of plays and figuring out the ones you like and kind of working with the coordinator to say, all right, this is what I do well. So you do wonder what input he gave Kellen Moore as far as like, these are the concepts that I'm most comfortable with. These are the concepts that I'm best at. And I talked on Anthony's show about it today. I'm reading this book. I mentioned it last week. It's Michael Silver's book on the Shanahan coaching staff. But anyways, there's this summit that kind of happened, and Seth Wickersham did a great piece on this a few years ago when Matt Ryan going into year 2 in Atlanta with Kyle Shanahan, and they kind of had this meeting out in California in Tom House's house, or Tom House's home rather, and it was about like finding ways to maximize Matt Ryan within that offense, and you just wonder if how much of this is Jalen Hurts driven, and how much of this, like, are they saying, Jalen, here's an offense that you're going to run and you're going to be good in it, trust us? Or is it Jalen Hurts saying, these are the concepts I want to run, I'm the franchise quarterback?
We all silly like the mayor.